Hi everyone, so today's video is going to be a little bit different, and so many of you over the time that I've been on YouTube have asked me to kind of do like advice and mainly relationship advice and that kind of thing videos, and I've been a bit reluctant to do it just because I'm going to put the little disclaimer out there and say it. I'm not a relationship expert, I'm no Kerry Bradshaw, and I didn't want to give anybody advice that could potentially not be the right advice, and I didn't want to kind of make anyone's situation worse or anything like that. I wanted to just keep it kind of light and breezy, but I feel like I kind of have a responsibility towards you guys, and I try and get back to as many comments as I can and reply to as many messages as I can, and I want to make sure that you're all having a great Valentine's Day. And some of you asked a few questions, so I've collected the questions, I've gotten them written down on my phone, and I'm going to just read the questions out and kind of give you my advice on the topics mentioned. But just remember that I'm not a relationship expert. I have been in a relationship for the past 4 years, and so yeah, it's a fairly serious relationship, but nonetheless I'm no relationship expert, and I don't always get it right either. I'm sure I do tons of relationship mistakes as well. But let's get on with the first question. So the first question is about saying I love you first if a guy has already said it to you. So if a guy has already told you that they loved you and maybe you didn't feel ready and you didn't say it first, when's the right time to then say it yourself? It's a really good question, and I think that you've got two choices really. You can either wait until they say it again, but then if they've said it and you haven't said it back, they might kind of feel a bit reluctant to say it again. So it is very hard kind of plucking up the courage to tell someone that you love them, but if they've already told you that they love you, it's less daunting because they've already told you that they love you, so you haven't got that fear of rejection, of them not feeling the same way or not saying it back, because you know that they already feel like that. So in that way I think it's kind of easier, and my advice to that would be to just go for it, to just kind of wait until it's a really nice intimate moment and just sort of say something like, you know, when you said to me the other day that you loved me, and then they'll say yeah, and then you can just say, well, I just wanted to tell you that I love you too, or that I feel the same, or something like that. It kind of eases it in and it makes it a little bit less awkward, and you shouldn't feel awkward about saying it, especially if they've already said it to you, because if you feel it, then there's nothing wrong with feeling it, and the worst thing that can happen is that they won't say it back, and it'll be a bit awkward and a bit upsetting, but it's not the end of the world. But in this particular case, he's already told you that he loves you, so for you to be able to say it should be fairly straightforward. Then the next question is approaching men when they've got their mates around. Now this is a really tough one, and obviously I'm a little out of practice with this because I have been with the same person for 4 years, but I can remember that kind of feeling when they're in a crowd and it's really scary, and you don't want to go up and talk to anyone because you don't want to have to deal with the kind of taunting comments that their friends might make, and it just makes you kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable, and you're not sure if you're saying the right thing, and if you're just if it's a little bit awkward and when they've got friends around. So the best advice for that really is to just approach whoever it is that you want to approach when there's as least people around, and if there are still mates around and that kind of thing, don't let it put you off. You've got to just kind of get it out of your mind and go straight for the kill, if that kind of makes sense, and go up to them and just sort of chat, or maybe spark a conversation with one of their friends about something completely irrelevant, and then you can get talking to the person that you want to be talking to, because I know it's very daunting when there's a lot of men involved. Another question is, what is the funniest thing that has ever happened to you when a guy has tried to pick you up? I've had quite a few funny ones over the years, but the one that happened to me recently was I was coming back home on the train. I was on the tube and I was waiting for my train, and the guy that was, I don't know what you'd call it, like a train conductor. He wasn't a train conductor, he was wearing one of those kind of bright like vesty things, I don't know what he was. A young guy came up and sort of sat next to me, and then I looked and I realised that I was waiting in the wrong place. So I then got up and was looking for where I was waiting, and he sort of asked if he could help me, and I told him where it was I needed to go, and he was like, oh okay, I'll show you. So he walked me to the platform that I needed to go, and I was expecting him to then just carry on with his job, and he didn't. He just stood there and waited with me, which was a little bit odd. So we stood there waiting, just sort of chatting, and it was very nice. And then my train came, and I was like, okay, I think I need to go now, and got on the train. And he got on the train with me, and he was stood there, and then I just sort of said, okay, well, I think I should go and sit down now because the train's about to leave, you know, hurrying him away. And then he sort of said okay, turned around to go, and then came back. And as soon as he turned around to come back, I knew what he was going to say, and I was just thinking, please don't say it, because it was a really small train and there were people sat there, and the train hadn't started moving yet, so it was really quiet. So there were only like 6 seats in the bit where we were, and people were sat in them, so you could hear what other people were saying. And I knew what he was going to say, and I knew that I was going to have to say no, and I just didn't want him to be embarrassed. And then he just sort of said, I was wondering if I could take you out for a drink sometime, and I just sort of had to be like, I'm sorry, no, I've got a boyfriend. And then he sort of was like, oh okay, turned around, came back, and then he asked, is it a serious boyfriend? And I was just sort of like, yeah. And then he was like, oh okay, alright then, well, have a nice day, and off he went. And then everyone in the train was staring at me, and this old man sort of looked at me and just sort of said something like, ooh, let him down gently, love, or something like that. And it was just so embarrassing, because I felt so bad for him, because he was nice, and he was, you know, he didn't do it in a creepy way, he was trying to be nice, but it was just really embarrassing for him that everybody else heard it. So that was kind of my recent funny one. But I've had some pretty ridiculous ones over the years. The worst, I think, is when you go on holiday. Then we have love advice you try and live by. This is a really, really good question, because I think everyone's got the advice that they would like to take and the advice that they actually take, and they don't always match one another. And the thing is, I don't necessarily go by the advice that I believe in, but the advice that I believe in is that men and women are completely different species. What we see isn't what men see, and what bothers us, they can't even begin to comprehend why it would bother you. The small things, the things that we kind of get stressed out over and think are completely obvious, to them are a complete mystery, and they just do not get it, and they are from a different planet. So trying to get a man sometimes to understand what you're talking about is kind of like talking to a brick wall, because they don't understand, because they aren't women and they just don't get how our brain works. And I think sometimes we don't get how men's brains work, and I think how men tend to think of things is in a much simpler way than women do. We overcomplicate things, and we like to read into things and to dissect every little thing, and, you know, read a text and think it has 17 million different meanings, and they don't. They just see things a lot simpler, and most men just kind of want a quiet life, basically. And I think most women like drama, and we kind of like to sort of big things up in our head, and I think that we're kind of influenced by that whole romantic comedy kind of thing, where we all think that that's going to happen to us, and that isn't really how real life goes. And I've come to terms with that. I used to kind of think that, you know, romance was declaring your love for someone in the rain, and now I'm grateful if my boyfriend washes up after himself, because that's just real life. And, you know, you can have sparks of romance here and there in real life. I'm not kind of here to depress you and to tell you that romance is out the window, but it isn't how you would imagine it to be, and it isn't how it is on TV. And another one that I really try and obey very unsuccessfully is to not compare. You look at someone else's relationship and you think, oh look, he's buying her expensive presents, and he's taking her on weekends away, and he's writing her letters and all these things, and then you think you look at yours and you think, why isn't mine doing that? What's wrong with my relationship that my relationship hasn't got that in it? What's wrong with my boyfriend that he's not doing things like that? What's wrong with me that I'm not worth things like that? And it's very, very, very easy to get caught up in that, and I know, because I'm guilty of doing it all the time. But then you have to just kind of catch yourself and think, well, hang on a minute. A, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. They might have, you know, loads of arguments behind closed doors. They might have an awful sex life. They might be not really that into each other. There's loads and loads of different things that could be happening, and because you don't know, you only know the kind of outside bit, and that isn't even a fragment of what an entire relationship is, and you can't know what that entire relationship is, and you don't know how the relationship started, and you know how the person felt at the beginning. And I think we all like to sort of think that we've got the biggest love story going, and if someone else has, then it kind of diminishes from yours a little bit. But I don't think that necessarily is always the case, and you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, and they might kind of not have other great things that you do have, and you know, they might be dealing with loads of other things that are very difficult. So it's kind of important to try and bear that one in mind. Then another question I have, this was a really important question actually, and it was an entire message, but I won't read you the entire message because it had a lot of detail in it. But it was basically about how to deal with jealousy and being scared of someone's reactions, and them promising change and the change not happening. This was someone who messaged me on my Facebook page, and her story was really interesting because she had had a boyfriend for a while, and he got very, very jealous over everything. And I think jealousy is one of those funny things that there's a very, very, very fine line between when it's nice and when it kind of becomes a little bit of a warning sign. And if a man gets very, very jealous, to me personally, and kind of makes the jealousy more about you than about the other person, I think that should raise a warning sign, because that indicates that they have got a little bit of a control issue. And controlling men are just not the best things to be dealing with, because it can kind of always get out of hand, and I don't know, I just don't think it's the best idea. But if someone, you know, is jealous that you got chatted up or something like that, but they kind of get cross at the person that did it, that's fine, that's perfectly normal. But if someone's taking their jealousy issues out on you, then that isn't okay, and you shouldn't feel like you're doing something wrong because they're always jealous. It indicates more about their insecurities and their control issues, and how they feel about their kind of not own relationships really, but their kind of own masculinity in a way, I think. And you need to try and remember that it isn't your fault, and if someone keeps promising that they're going to change and they don't, then that should also kind of raise alarm bells. And I know that giving advice about something like this is so difficult, because it's very easy to kind of give impartial advice, but if you love someone, then you love them, and there's nothing that's going to kind of erase that. But if you're trying to look at it kind of from a more eyes wide open type of thing, then you should know that if someone's that jealous and have kind of alienated you from everyone, and you don't want to go out because you're scared of their reaction, something is really not quite right. Someone should never ever have that hold over you. And my advice in this situation would be, if you really love this person and you really want to make it work, you need to sit down with them and have a talk and explain to them that this is how you feel, that you're not willing to put up with this type of control. They need to trust you, that you've never given them a reason to not trust you, and that it has to change, otherwise it's just never going to work out, because you're always feeling like you're doing something wrong, and that isn't a nice feeling to be in a relationship with. So I hope that was helpful. Then we have dealing with being cheated on and learning to trust again. This is a really interesting question, and to be honest with you, I've never experienced this, so I can't really talk about it. But one of my closest friends did, and I was kind of there for throughout the entire process, and I know how devastating it is when someone does that to you, because it feels like they've just ruined everything that you've built, and you can't understand why, and you can't understand what's wrong with you that this has happened, and what's not fulfilling enough about you that they've had to go and do this, and all sorts of things like that. And what you have to remember is that you know, there's two sides to every story, and some of it might be to do with your relationship problems, some of it might be a case of some people just can't be monogamous. And it's not just men, I'm not kind of giving men a bad rep here, some women can't too, but some people just can't be monogamous, and it isn't your fault, and it isn't your it isn't something that you've done that has caused them to do that. Obviously, if you had problems in your relationship and that kind of thing, I can understand when people kind of turn elsewhere. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do by any means, it's absolutely not, but I can understand how that can sometimes happen. And I feel like you should always really, really try and not blame yourself, and just look very hard at the relationship and think to yourself, okay, I need time to get over this. If you've chosen to sort of forgive this person and stay with them, then you need to make sure that they know that it can never ever happen again, and that if it does happen again, that is it. And if you've chosen to let go of that person, then you need to just give yourself the time to grieve. And don't try and get over things straight away because people tell you to. Don't try and date other people straight away because you feel that's what you should do. Take as much or as little time as you need to get over it, and to just kind of think it through and decide what you want to do, and just do something for you. And I know that it can really, really batter your trust because you feel like someone that you loved and you trusted did that to you. How are you ever going to be able to trust again? And the only way that you can kind of correct that is to just put yourself out there. There is absolutely no way around it. You have to try. You have to try and put yourself out there again and see what happens. And just be very, very wary. Look for the signs of someone being unfaithful, but at the same time, if you go into a relationship being paranoid that that person's going to cheat on you, you're just going to kind of create this black cloud around the relationship, and you're going to push them away because you're not going to ever trust them, and nobody likes the feeling of not being trusted. So you've just got to try really, really hard. Maybe even go and speak to somebody if it's affected you that badly that you haven't been able to have a relationship since because your trust is so affected, to try and just make sure that you know that it isn't your fault, and that you can just try and learn to trust somebody again, because you know there are tons of men out there that do things like that, but there are also tons of really great ones out there that don't do things like that, and it's a complete fallacy that all men are bastards. It's not true, and there are some really, really great ones out there, and there are men out there that would never ever dream of doing anything like that. And then the last question I'm going to touch, because I don't want this to be an uber long video, is to do with relationships and self-esteem. How low self-esteem can affect your relationship. And I have done a kind of more in-depth video about this, but I'm just going to touch on the subject very quickly. I think that if you've got low self-esteem, being in a relationship can either make it better or make it worse. And if you feel like it's making it worse, then maybe you're not in the right relationship. But if you kind of, I don't know, I am a believer in that you should kind of love yourself before anyone else can, but I know that that is a complete myth, and that it doesn't always work that way, and that it's not really the most practical advice. So I'm not going to kind of go down that road, but what I will say is that I feel like all you can do is just try your hardest, and to just kind of try and know that this person is with you because they want to be with you. You know, all these flaws that you see, men don't really notice. And I had a comment from someone in yesterday's video saying that that's not true and that men do notice. I don't know. From my personal experience, they don't. Maybe they're just all bullshitting us, but I don't know. But I know that they don't see things the way we do. And if someone's with you, it's because they love you, and it's because they want to be with you. And your low self-esteem and thinking that you're not worth being with them and all that kind of thing is only going to ruin it, and ruin the great thing that you have, and just kind of turn it into something that's more about paranoia and about your own insecurities. And you shouldn't let your own insecurities ruin a relationship, because when relationships are great, they're really, really great, and when they're not great, then they're really, really awful. But at the end of the day, you know, it's what we're kind of destined to do. And I know that I wouldn't have it any other way, even though sometimes I absolutely hate my boyfriend. I don't really hate him. I love him, but sometimes I hate him, and it's okay to feel like that. It's perfectly normal. You're not mental if you feel that way. It's perfectly normal. And yeah, so I hope this video helped you. If you want any more kind of like ask me questions, like, I don't know, maybe we'll call it something like, I don't know, some sort of, you know how Anna Saccone does the Ask Anna videos? I really like those. If you want anything like that, then maybe let me know and put in the comments questions that you'd like me to answer or that kind of thing, and maybe once a week or once every month or something I'll do like a questions video and answer questions if you want that. If you're not interested in that at all, then that's fine too, because I don't think I'd be interested in what I've got to say. But apart from that, yes, my phone case, in case anybody asks, because I was holding my phone in this, was from eBay, and it's really, really cute. It's got like little cherries on it. It's kind of made the camera go dark now, but yeah. So my phone case is from eBay, and my jumper is from Romwe, and my nails are Essie's Fiji, and it really needs to be taken off and reapplied because it's kind of cracking. But yeah, I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope you all have an amazing, amazing Valentine's Day, whatever you're doing. And yeah, if you aren't with anyone or anything like that, then still make sure you have fun. And considering it's Valentine's Day and you need to say that you love people and all that kind of thing, I just want to say that I appreciate every single one of you, and I love you all, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye.